Ladies, I am joining you from my bedroom. So it's a non-traditional sharing today because I've been crying a lot. And so I figured, you know what, let's just be real, turn the camera on. I didn't want to disappoint you. And today we're going to be talking about attachment theory and love and relationships and investigating whether you're wired for love or wired for war. I'm Dr. Kelly Martin Chu, Amazon bestselling author, speaker, and dating and relationship coach for women. And while it's so easy to just jump on normally and be so happy today, I am experiencing a lot of sadness. I've been crying a lot because over the past several weeks, just a lot has come up. I had launched something new in my business. I've been growing so much, growing leaps and bounds as a leader. And since that launch, have found it really challenging in my personal relationship with my husband. And so stuff has surfaced. Today it was brought to my attention, as we were getting some support, that I didn't have a voice when I was little. And so what came forward today, which was actually really healing, was the 5-year-old version of me that never really had a voice. And I share this with you because I know so many of you feel vulnerable, and you might even be wondering, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me in relationships? And so being the researcher that I am and trying to get back on track with Richard, as we've had some challenges, and some of these challenges have been going on for a long time. We're both so committed to one another and so committed to our love and to our growth. We're getting some support. So I guess it was last week, I went to the bookstore. I love to research and understand, and so I went into the relationship section. I figured, you know what, let's learn some new skills, new tool set. And so there are 2 books that really stood out. One was called Wired for Dating, and one was called Wired for Love. And being that I am the multitasker, I've been listening on audio to Wired for Love and have been listening to or reading Wired for Dating. And today I want to talk about that. And Dr. Stan, or I think he's a doctor. Anyway, he shares that we're actually all wired prehistorically for war first and foremost, and it's primal, and that keeps us safe. And he talks about kind of our primal response, especially under threat, and how we can become defensive. And we all have different ways to handle. Hello, Mark. Oh my gosh, so good to see you. Mwah, 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 mwah. We have 2 parts of our brain. One is very primal, that's related to keeping us safe and also procreating, right? And then the other part of our brain is wired for relationships. And so when stress rises in relationships, we often tend to defect towards that primal, which is to keep you safe. And so, I am so interested in neuroscience and how the brain works, and curious where, the researchers are showing us that how we show up in relationship, that there are 3 different attachments of how we're wired based on the attachment theory. And the attachment theory basically says this, that when we come into the world, our caregivers, they look at the history of your relationship with your primary caregivers all the way up until about 13 years old. And the question becomes was that relationship secure? Was that caregiver there for you, supporting you, getting your needs met, creating safety? And someone who has that and has had that experience from being a baby through what do they say, about 13 years old, that people who have a primary caregiver that creates that stability and creates that safety, they identify with a secure attachment, which is between the primary caregiver and the child. Think about it, coming into this world where as babies, human babies, we're incredibly helpless and we rely on our caregivers. And so they have found that people who come into this world and are cultivated with a secure attachment, that these people also carry that imprinting through their intimate relationships, and they're able to recreate and create more secure relationships than others. There are two other types of attachments, and Stan speaks to these as far as one he calls island and one he calls the wave. And so the island attachment is someone who, from babyhood onwards, their primary caregiver, if they would leave, that it created that insecurity. And so someone who has more of an island attachment, if they have kind of like, I talk about like the child, like I do it myself kind of, feeling, because under fear, they can tend to be incredibly independent, and it's hard to let somebody in. It's hard to let somebody be vulnerable because their relationship with their primary caregiver, that they weren't always there. Their needs weren't met. And so those children became more independent, so that they would self-soothe and that they would get their needs met, or try to on their own, kind of growing up too fast, and some might say. And then the third attachment they call kind of the wave. And this is the mantra of the wave kind of person, is like, we'll do it together. They can tend to be very needy. So at a very young age, if that primary caregiver left and they developed that wave-like mentality, then they would kind of smother and be very needy with the caregiver when that caregiver would leave. So those were the two, what they might consider a more unhealthy attachment, not like the secure. Now, what's fascinating is that over time, they say that we're really anchored in secure, island, or wave, and not that we can't have secure relationships in our future, but it requires us to really begin to identify what are some of the things that you push partners away if you're more island, or not, not allow people in, or how are you being too needy and you live in that place of fear of that in intimate relationship, you're so fearful of that person turning on you or not being reliable. And so we have these underlying fears. And so what I have come to learn, literally, like today was huge for me. I went right back to being, 5, and even some other memories of not feeling as secure as I thought I had. And it really is, there's some quizzes in both of, or at least I forget to which book, Wired for Love, I think, where maybe it's Wired for Dating. You can actually answer some questions to begin to identify which one you most likely are, and then how to create more security and in a healthy way in your adult relationships. So what I learned about myself, and it's really been mirrored more recently, or brought to my attention. I mean, I've always been a very independent woman, and yet also able to form very secure bonds. I mean, secure bonds with my husband, but under stress, I definitely can tend to be that one that kind of just takes my path, just like I do it myself, and putting that armor up and really not necessarily letting in some of that vulnerability, some of the fear. And I'm just, really shocked at the imprinting that I had, and it's beginning to have me really think about this and the impact, that it's had on my relationship. I've also identified, I believe that my husband might be more of like the wave, which can be more needy. And so if you take somebody that's very independent and someone that can tend to potentially be more needy, they're gonna when they come together and under stress, they're going to really want to go in different directions. That the island is going to want alone time, processing time, integration time, and the wave kind of person is wanting to move closer. And I can tell you most recently, we had this experience or this disagreement where I came downstairs from the morning and Richard came in for the hug. And normally I'm very hugging and love, love, like all about love. And I've just been going through my own stuff and we've had some fights. And so I wasn't feeling that desire to connect. And then so by me disengaging, his defenses went up. And, I was able to really share with him, be really vulnerable about what was going on for me. And so anyway, what I'm learning as I go deeper and deeper into the investigation of what does it take to have a really healthy relationship, what I'm amazed by is that there always is another layer of healing, of fundamental stuff. Hey, Carrie, gosh, I haven't seen you for a while. Good to see you. Some fundamental imprinting that we have as children. And sometimes what we think we are or how we were imprinted, it's my belief that, I tend to be the optimist. And so what my lens through which was looking at my childhood was from the optimist. And I've really had the opportunity more recently to see those island attachments that I can tend to gravitate more towards, and how destructive that can be in a relationship. And what I've realized is that that interdependency that I speak to, it's easier said than done. And in relationships, we get to heal. And today I got to revisit that little 5-year-old, part of me that didn't totally feel safe and secure in my home and my family. And, that's not something that is easy to really look at. And so I just come here sharing totally vulnerable, to let you know that you're not a victim at all to the attachments of how your primary caregivers, how you were attached. And rarely are you like solely one, that you often can be a combination. But for us to get really real I believe that in partnership, in the spiritual partnerships that I'm such a stand for men and women, is an opportunity to do that deeper healing. And it really is only through partnership that we can really do it, because our partners are really mirrors. And so what we've been navigating is that when Richard gets upset, he can be the very expressive one, and I can tend to retreat. And we've been married now for 10 years, and there have been some unresolved things, and it's time to heal. So I invite you to check out this attachment theory and begin to investigate where you are, because the good news is no matter where you are, we can all as individuals grow and come together in a more attached, healthy, secure relationship. And I really do believe that, dating and then leading to that intimate partnership and that long-term partnership. As I said, we've been married for over a decade, and it's time to heal some of these pieces. So healing is not always fun, but what an opportunity so that you can be a better partner, so that you can grow as individuals. And looking at that psychobiology of what might be triggering you, as I said, this idea that, primally we're wired for war, according to Stan. But once we're able to, feel safe, then we have that wired for relationships, part of that, that we really are meant to be in relationships and meant to be growing and meant to depend on one another. And it's my goal in my partnership to continue in that middle grade area of that interdependency. And I invite you all to do the same. So that is what I wanted to share with you on Transformational Tuesday, that no matter where you are, it's always an invitation to heal, to go deeper, and to really, if you're feeling sad or feeling disconnected, it's okay, and to give yourself that space to feel nurtured and to feel held. And sometimes it takes time. I know that I can tell you I have been being hard on myself, not wanting to take the foot off the gas, to really be still and present and acknowledge the sadness, and then acknowledge the 5-year-old version, the little girl that wants to feel safe and wants to feel heard and wants to have a voice, and that we as adults can go back and really pull in those different pieces of ourselves so that we can continue to feel more whole and more in our hearts. And sometimes we have the opportunity to create that container of safety that allows for the growth. And I would love to hear in the comments below if you know about attachment theory, maybe a thumbs up, or if you have already read about it, whether or not you identify with secure, or what he calls island, or what he calls wave. So, so that we can all be on this journey together. So I'm Dr. Kelly Martin Shue, Amazon bestselling author, speaker, and transformational coach for women. And I've just launched an academy so that you can get these foundational skills to create lifelong love that will be with you for the rest of your life. And if this sounds like something that interests you, registration is going to be closing very, very soon. And so book your love breakthrough call with me, and let's see if you're a fit to really support you and midwife you into the beautiful relationship that you deserve. Go to drkellylive.com. Signing off, and we'll see you same time next week. Have a fantastic day.